Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer, food maker, or artisan selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast.
I'm Kat Fields-White.
And I'm Bridget Myers. We're longtime farmers market managers, educators, and consultants. Get ready to catch up on all things farmers market pros with us. Today, we're answering questions from our listeners about all the farmers market things.
So many things.
So many things.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by Farmers Market University, offering a self-paced online market management 101 course for new market managers year-round, and live market management certification classes annually. Learn the skills you'll need to manage a new market or improve your current market operations and reduce your stress. Find more information about current course offerings by clicking the Farmers Market University logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
All right, well, welcome back to Tent Talk, everybody. Today, we are answering questions from our listeners and our online community.
So many questions. So we love it when y'all message us and ask questions.
Yeah.
We also hang around in our own online community, pick up some questions there and some other communities online.
Yes.
So we get some interesting things that come up. One of the big ones now, what do we do about the weather?
What are we going to do about this weather? Mother Earth is pissed. She's going to get us. But there are tips and tricks to help.
I think we caused this problem ourselves. Don't
this
blame your mom.
When things go wrong, blame your mom.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. But yes, we are having lots of questions, and this does come up kind of year after year, even more and more. But as market operators and folks who operate in markets, it's good to kind of talk about what do we do about heat advisories, how to stay cool, why to stay open, what to do if you're closing, things like that. What are some ways we can navigate this?
Yeah, and we get this question a lot in, phrased one way or another. It's going to be 107 degrees. Do I close?
Yep.
And usually we have some follow-up questions. So where are you? If you're in Arizona, you're going to have a cool day at 107. Go forth.
That's a breezy early summer day.
Right. Is your populace and your market vendors and farmers, are they used to high heat?
Yeah.
Do they already have the tools they need, extra ways to stay hydrated, ways to keep their produce clean? Are your farmers and vendors equipped to do the things you need to do in high heat? So, keeping their produce cool, keeping their products cool at the market so that they don't expire quickly.
Yeah.
But one of the things to remember when folks are asking about do I close because it's hot is if it's hot at the market, it's way hot in the fields. And so a lot of times those farmers have crops that they got to come out.
Yeah.
They have to pull those. They've got to get them to market. They got to sell them because otherwise the crops are going to expire in the fields and then they're done.
Yeah.
They can't bring that back and start again when it's cooler. That's not how that works. So staying open whenever possible is really important. We're going to do one of those disclaimers here and say we are not advising you to stay open at 120. And if you get heat stroke, don't call us back. But
use your better judgment. But also those farmers, if it's hot at the farm, then they harvested in this sweltering heat and have all this bounty to bring to the market after some even harder labor than they usually do, which is already hard. So closing, we can't be willy-nilly about closing. Or
Right.
we can't be, I don't think it's really willy-nilly if you're trying to decide what's best for your vendors and the folks that come out to the market. But really, you need to take the time to think about this and think if you're making, the best decision. And for better or for worse, this is on our shoulders. As market managers, we have to make the call about these things. And so having a plan ahead of time and thinking about what you're going to do in this circumstance, you've got to make those decisions now about your plan so that when something comes up, when or if, you'll better and more confident about your decision.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So some good tools that we've seen people use are, we've seen a lot of markets in the last few weeks where they were having really bad heat advisories in the Pacific Northwest, some in California. We saw Texas having a rough time. Virginia, which is usually kind of hot and humid in the summer, but they were having spiking really high temperatures, higher than usual.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the things you can do is maybe shift your hours. We saw a lot of folks that were opening at their usual time and encouraging people to come out early in the morning, and then they were closing, say, at 10:30 or 11, as opposed to going to noon or 1 as they usually did. So they were kind of packing it up, encouraging people to buy quickly and then get out of the heat again. So that's good. Lots of methods for providing drinking water at the market so people can stay cool. Cooling towels that they were getting wet in cold water and passing out to people to keep on their necks, especially their farmers and vendors that are going to be standing there for hour after hour. So there's things you can do to mitigate this without closing.
For sure. I think Sometimes, I mean, depending on the temperature, how high it's getting, sometimes the worst thing about working a hot market is just that you're not prepared. I know I've shown up at a market before just not thinking about it, not having checked the weather app enough, and it's hot and I'm wearing jeans and I didn't bring my biggest, coolest hat and I only brought one bottle of water, so I ran out and I didn't pre-hydrate the day before. I don't have a hydration packet. Just I don't have a fan. Like those little things that I do bring when it's hot, I just didn't really prep ahead of time. And it made a hot day way, way worse. It wasn't intolerable for everybody there, but it's just my day was worse. So think about thinking ahead for you and your team, communicating that to your farmers and vendors, putting that out on your social and in your email newsletter, saying, hey, come on out. Like, don't forget to bring your hat and drink lots of water. And we have a water refill station. And this vendor offers lemonade. Like, that'll be great on a nice hot day. So just those, don't pretend like it's not happening.
Right.
Because then you're going to have a situation.
Right.
So,
and just like if you're a farmer's market manager, just like you tell your farmers and vendors, you're going to have to make this decision within a reasonable amount of time.
Yep.
Don't wait until late the night before to decide you're going to close tomorrow, because by then your bakers have baked, your farmers have harvested, you're putting them in a really bad position, and you don't have time to get the information out to your shoppers. And shoppers do not like to trek out there in the heat and find that you're not open that day. They're disappointed, and they may find a more convenient and air-conditioned place to shop, and it may take you a while to get them back.
Yeah, we can't let that happen. So there's a lot of good reasons to make sure that you are not closing when it is possible to be open, for all the same reasons that we're open at all, is that we don't want folks to make a hobbit, go on a search for a ring, because we don't want folks to go make a habit of shopping at grocery stores and getting, commercial produce and meat and groceries. So just think of those reasons as the same reasons to stay open, even when the weather's not perfect.
That's right.
Yeah.
And keep those dogs at home. That asphalt's hot during this kind of weather,
Oh,
burning
please.
those little paws.
Oh, it pains me when I see that at the market. So.
Yeah, I've seen some people with good signs at their markets.
Yes.
And some people that are taking a hard line on, you may not bring your pets to the market when it's over this temperature.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the optics of dogs just like
poor little things.
keeling over. Yeah. So let's not do that.
We got a question from a farmer that said, how do I keep from selling out so fast? I can't grow any faster than I grow. And if I do sell out, what am I supposed to do? And I think it's because a lot of markets like ours have the rule that if you sell out early, that tent has to stay up, the sign has to stay up. You can't be pulling in and pulling down a tent that gives people the impression that the market's closing. It's bad for the vendors around you that have stronger inventory that are staying open. So, you've got to stay open till the end of the market. So you want to bring enough to get you through the whole market to sell. So there's a couple of things. You need to be careful about which market you're at. If you're a farmer that has a limited capacity for production, maybe you don't want to be at the biggest market in your town. Maybe you want to go to a market that does get a little bit lighter foot traffic so that you can start building that customer base that will stay with you as you increase your capacity to grow.
Yeah.
So that's good. The other thing you might want to look at is maybe you need to be charging more for your products. If you are somebody that's growing beautiful produce, but you can't grow very much of it, this happens with organic farmers sometimes, because if you're not using heavy-duty inputs and chemicals, you're losing some product to waste. And so what you do grow and bring to market is valuable. And if you're selling out early, that means there's a demand for it. Try taking your prices up a bit. So if you are if you're selling the same amount of produce, you're spending a little bit longer doing it, but you're going to have to be there for those hours anyway. Make a little bit more margin on that produce. And that may give you, too, some extra money to reinvest in your farm, into your growing methods, maybe into the space you have, or ways to do more intensive farming so you can grow more.
Yeah.
And then the other answer, I think, would be value-added products. So you can take some of what you're growing and turn it into soup mixes, or, take some of that fruit and turn it into jams, or do dried tomatoes, things that you can sell in sort of smaller quantities for the same price or more, that will also stretch out the amount of produce that you have and bring you a bigger profit margin.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you're in places with a little bit less restrictions than our dear California has, maybe you can sell, tote bags or other things, shirts with your farm name on it, some other things, so you're not really selling out and you still have something for those customers to get. I think that point about finding a market that's the right size for the amount of inventory that you're able to bring is important, because when you're selling out and those shoppers are coming after you've already sold out, you're making those shoppers upset. And
Right.
And sometimes that will reflect on the market or markets as a whole, that shoppers get this idea that they're unpredictable, they can't be trusted to have what they need on their shopping list, things like that. So kind of taking that into consideration. If you're really selling out super early every single time, you're not doing that market any favors by being there. So if there's somewhere else you can go where you can sell the whole time, and not leave with a bunch of lost inventory, but find a market that's more on pace with how much you can possibly produce and bring to the market.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good
Good
tip.
choices. Food vendor contacted us. This one was live and in person, actually.
Yep.
And said, which was great. I mean, it made it easier for us because we could see her booth. Saying people glance at my display, but they don't stop. What am I doing wrong? Well, so in that particular vendor's case, and this is, again, one of those questions where you need to ask some questions back to find out exactly what the problem is. But in her case in particular, she was using a tablecloth banner as opposed to a front and back banner on her booth. So the simple fact was nobody could see what she sold unless they got very close to her and stopped. And people will eventually get close to you and stop, but you got to grab them first. You got to grab them out of the aisle because if you're in a market that's busy, there's a lot of vendors. So signs, front and back banners that are attractive, that are very clear about what you're selling will help you a lot. There's some just basic display things like high-low displays, keeping your display full, a display where you have one or two single items on little pedestals. Sometimes that looks a little bit too precious. People don't want to interrupt your display. They don't want to.
Yeah.
They don't want to take it apart. Clearly, it's been designed as a piece of art, and so heaven forbid they should mess it up by buying something. So you have to be careful with that on your display. And then another one, and this applied not just to her but to a couple other vendors I've talked to lately. Please, please, please use signage that indicates your prices. People are afraid to approach you if they don't know what your product costs. They don't want to be embarrassed if it turns out to be more than they want to spend. They may approach you and it may be a higher price than they're planning on, and they may even buy it because, again, they want to avoid the embarrassment of appearing to not be able to afford your product, but they will not be coming back to you because the overall sense that they've had from that experience is embarrassment.
Yep.
So please, please, do yourself a favor, post prices for your products, whether it's individual little signs with each product, whether it's a nicely designed menu that's on the front of your booth that names the products and their prices. This will be good for you.
Exactly. And if you are afraid that someone might say, oh my gosh, that's so expensive, like how can you be charging for that? Just have a response for that kind of loaded and just say, look, I'm a one-person operation. I make all of this small batch. I make it with my own two hands. You're talking to the person that makes this. I use strawberries from that farm across the way. This is a special design jar, that has a great look to it, and you can bring it back for $1 next time. I mean, like, have some kind of backup for your prices, which you should have anyways. And of course, some people will be cranky with any kind of response that you give, even if your product is $1. But I think it's nice to put those prices out because then it starts a conversation if there are any issues with your prices. And also, we're not really in the business of like tricking people into buying our stuff. So no prices, it does feel like a little bit of like you're trying to trick them into buying something and then you're going to surprise them with the price, where farmers markets really are different than that. They are more about a conversation, about understanding why things cost the way they do. So that's really helpful to have prices and to just explain what you have there. I think that's good. I did have this conversation recently with a vendor at my own market as well. She said, what do you think about my display? Is there anything I can do to improve it? And she also had like low banners or like a standing banner that didn't come up very high. And it was at our busier market where the aisles are like shoulder to shoulder. And I said, no one can see. All they see is your face and your tent. And so they don't know what's happening in your booth. So put a sign up top that says, nut butters. Like, just tell them what you're doing here. Like, give them an idea. So, and not even just your business name, because sometimes that doesn't tell what you sell. So I think giving folks kind of like help them help you.
That's right. Help them help you.
There's a lot of things going on at the market. So bring them in with that.
Yeah. I like the nicely designed back banner that has your logo and is pretty and kind of gives the mood, along with a front banner, that banner that's only 10 inches deep, that is 9 inches wide. So it's tightly across the front panel of your booth that says very clearly just what you sell. Like you said, nut butters, cookies, fresh baked goods.
Yes.
Yeah, very quick and simple to bring them over, and then they can see the more detailed thing that you have in the back, but that will increase your walk-up so much.
And then people can find you, especially if your market is doing some advertising for you. I always talk to my vendors about this because I I work very hard at curating a nice email newsletter. And so I write about what each vendor has to offer. And I say, get this and this and this and put them together. So I'll say their vendor name and I'll usually say their product, but then I'll go up to the vendor and their signage, you can't tell. So if someone's reading the newsletter and they're looking for, Polito Farms, but Polito Farms has a little sign right on their table and you can't tell that that's the farm that I'm talking about in the newsletter. Polito Farms is a bad example because they have a huge, beautiful, bright orange sign. But if it's a vendor that has a little sign that you can't tell, then it's like, oh, they read the newsletter. They're looking around for you and they can't find you. So again, help us help you.
That's right.
So give the people what they want. They want to know what you're selling. Put that up there nice and clear for them. And then rein them in with your, design packaging and your product offering. I do agree with like a precious display is not, people want to buy from Bounty. I just had this conversation with my staff at the market too, because we have new canvas tote bags and there was just a few sitting out on the table. And I said, get all the bags that we have right now, empty that entire box onto this table. I want a stack of 20 bags on this table. People don't want to feel like they're buying the last one.
Right.
They want to think, oh yeah, I'm buying one of many, like I'm getting a good one before they sell out. So they want to see this bounty. Like, we're in America. We want to see bountiful piles of stuff everywhere. So that's just kind of the psychology of sales. But doing that with your vendor display is really helpful as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What does Michael Kilpatrick tell farmers? Stack it high and see it fly.
I love that. I love it. So I think that was helpful when we talked to that food vendor, and any vendors that are listening or market managers that are trying to help their vendors as well. That's great tips for them.
Yep.
So we had another conversation happening in our private Facebook group about vendors bashing each other on social media. Bad vendors.
Bad vendors, no cookie.
No cookie for you. And should a market manager respond to that? And how involved are we getting in?
Yeah, and it sounded like two vendors that had sort of an ongoing feud where they post things about the origins of the product, or they post things about, not nice things. Not nice things.
Not nice things.
Yeah, so there's a few things on that. I think, and she got a lot of answers. The manager got a lot of answers, and we as well practice this. You should have something in your market rules about being respectful towards other farmers and vendors, towards the market team, and towards shoppers.
Yep.
And that's just basic. And that for us is sort of a zero tolerance thing. Like if you're trash talking another vendor, or you're trash talking market policies, or you're being rude to a market team member or a vendor next to you, we just don't find that acceptable in any way. We work hard and we work in a happy place. And that's just kind of one of our basic rules. So I think that's important. And you can definitely enforce that. It's a little harder. And I'm not sure what people think they're gaining by that. If they're, we had somebody that was trying to get into our market not too long ago and was saying, oh, well, my product's much better than this and it's much better than this. It's like, who do you think chose those vendors? I chose them. Are you saying that I don't have good judgment about what a good product is? I don't see how they thought they were getting ahead doing that. So
I've had that conversation with vendors that have applied. Well, my cookies are so much better than this vendor's cookie that you have at the market. I go, excuse me, I tested those cookies and placed them in my market because they are good and I thought they were good. So all you're saying is that you don't like my taste in cookies. So all that's telling me is that I'm not going to like your cookies.
Yeah.
I'm like, you are not helping yourself here.
No, not helping yourself.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. But that's more like conversation wise. But when it's kind of a public.
Yeah, and you're disparaging other vendors. You're implying that the market doesn't have good vendors. Do you think that's drawing customers to you?
Yeah, or
in the same market? I don't get what they think they're accomplishing there.
Yeah.
I sort of get it because I understand that kind of personality, but it's not a personality I want to play with day after day.
Mm-hmm.
This one was a little bit trickier. So you can actually decline to offer space to somebody that's going to be abrasive with fellow vendors or with you or with your shoppers.
Yeah.
Goodness sakes, that's the worst. But when they're doing it on social media versus at the market, it gets a little bit tricky to monitor, and it gets a little bit tricky to enforce those rules. I think you can still enforce them. You can go back to your mutual respect kind of clause in your rules. But in terms of, this person was asking about, should I respond? Should I post to their social media when they say something bad about a fellow vendor? Should I defend that vendor in the comments? And my hunch is no, that's not a good idea.
I just feel like that won't help.
It won't help. It's just going to escalate. You don't want to You don't want to raise it to a he said, she said argument, and then people have to take sides about whether they believe you or believe him. I don't know. I just feel like social media has such a tendency to escalate and just take a bad turn very quickly in many instances.
Yes, just swampy vibes happening. I just think if people are at the point where they're arguing publicly on social media, no kind of comment or rebuttal is going to shift that. They're not going to say, oh, you're right.
Right.
I retract my comments.
Right.
So you just kind of my suggestion, I think we're on the same page too. Our suggestion is just to kind of let the social media thing, fizzle out as it will. I mean, this is a good tip, is that any kind of high drama on social media, as we all are learning at this point, very heightened, very rage, clickbaity situations peak, they spike, they climax, and then everyone forgets about them 5 seconds later after the next thing is.
Because there's a new piece of excitement and chaos to focus on.
Yeah. So social media aside, I think managing the behavior of your vendors, you really, like we've said, you need to have these rules outlined ahead of time, because when this has happened, not in this kind of escalated public way, but we have had vendors that have been speaking poorly about other vendors at our market, either to shoppers a couple times, which is obviously a huge no-no, or to our staff or to their neighboring vendors. And we've just said, hey, you know what? Rule number 5 on our rules and guidelines that you signed and agreed to when you joined this market says you may not speak disparagingly about other participants, about our staff, about neighboring businesses, about shoppers at this market. And we just don't tolerate it. And that's that. And as Shiny says, we don't do that here.
We don't do that here. Thank you, Shiny Flannery.
Yep.
Words to live by.
Yep. So, it sounds like this has kind of gotten a lot out of control. But I would, as a market manager, I would try to be the voice of calm and reason in this situation, even when it's difficult, and just say, look, we have this rule in place. Maybe not imply who's wrong and right, but just say we have a rule where we don't speak disparagingly about other folks that participate in this market. You're violating that rule. You can give a warning, or you can say, I have removed you from this. Your weekly reservation is canceled.
Yeah. Maybe this is not the market for you.
Exactly. Yeah. So tough situation. Super tough.
So this is kind of related. If a vendor's not doing well, what do we do? Is that our business? Well, I mean, it's your business because you want everybody succeeding at your market.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah. I will say it's related because when a vendor comes to me and says, hey, I'm not doing very well at your market, like I want to leave, or they're just upset, there's a few things that I go through first. I look at who are they placed next to, because some vendors, although they're not going around disparaging everybody, they are just little cranky guys and gals and whoever's.
Just folks that have a negative outlook on life.
Yes. And they're fine as vendors, and they come and they show up and they sell their goods and they leave. But they're kind of like a black hole where they're just kind of sucking the energy from their neighbors. So some vendor neighbors can take that, and they just can be next to somebody who's like that, and it doesn't affect them at all, and they're fine. Some, especially newer vendors, it's hard for them to separate that kind of energy from their experience at the market. So what I usually do is say, hey, if you want to leave, our policy is 2 weeks. Like, please give us the courtesy of that. It's up to you. I can't make you stay. But would you like to work on things at this market to see if we can improve your situation? And usually I'll look at who they're next to. And if they're next to somebody like that, I'll say, let's move locations in the market. Let me pop you into a different spot and see if that works. So it's not necessarily like the prime corner is what I'm going to move you into, but just a different location in the market that has better neighbors, has a real positive vendor next to you that has like a lot of energy and is just always really happy to be there no matter what.
Yeah, and sometimes seemingly random changes can even be helpful. Sometimes a vendor just works better in one area than another.
Yeah.
Whether it's synergism with their neighbors or whether it's just, I don't know. That's the kind of product the person coming around that corner wants to see.
Exactly.
Even doing it for a really long time, sometimes that's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's unpredictable sometimes. Sometimes I think a vendor's going to do so well in this spot and say, oh, this is going to be a great spot for them, so I'll move them. And then a couple weeks later, they'll go, can we go back up to the top at the market where, we just liked it better if their vibes are better. It's like, okay.
Yeah,
great,
it's funny. Yeah. So that's why it's always funny when somebody says, I want a better spot. Well, define better. That's subjective.
This just happened to me like 7 or 8 months ago at the market. I moved 2 vendors from like the end of our markets, which people think, vendors who haven't been at the market think that those are not the good spots. But I have tried to move vendors out of those ends and put them into different spots multiple times. And either they say, no, I don't want to move, even if I have a spot open up in the very center of the market. Or they try it for a couple weeks and then they go, oh, can I please move back?
Yeah, it's
It
funny.
really happens. And I go, I mean, sure. And then I have to start a new vendor in the middle because that's the only spot I have available. So it causes a whole chicken and egg thing. But yeah, I mean, it's just when someone says like, what's the best spot in the market? It's like, I don't know.
Who knows?
Who
Yeah, it
knows?
just depends. It's so many factors affect that. The other thing, when you have a vendor that says they're not doing well, the very first thing I look at is how long have they been there?
Yeah.
Because almost everybody, even at a busy market, oftentimes we see that people don't feel like they're doing well in their second and third week or their fourth week.
Yep.
And we have a policy when a new vendor starts at a market that they have to commit to 6 consecutive weeks.
Yep.
They can't pop in and out. They got to be there 6 weeks in a row, because a lot of people that feel like this is not the market for them and their business just isn't working for whatever reason, at 3 weeks in a market will be thriving at 6 weeks.
Yep.
There's a whole cycle of shoppers who come in with a list and they know what they're going to buy, and they will eyeball a new vendor, but they're not going to go to them. They already have their list. And then the second week, they'll probably do that again, and they'll start to develop a little bit of trust. And the third week, they'll take a sample. And then the fourth week, that customer goes out of town. And the fifth week, their kid's soccer game goes to playoffs and they don't show up. But then the sixth week, that person's on their list and they're ready. They come back ready to buy. And if you're letting people drop out when they're just a couple, 2-3 weeks in, they just missed success.
Yeah.
They were just about to bloom and they miss it. So we're hardcore about that. We don't take vendors that say, oh, well, I could come in, but I could only be there for 2 weeks and then I need 2 weeks off and then I could come back after that. My answer is always, okay, well, let's just wait until you come back. You need to do those 6 consecutive weeks to tell if this market's a good fit for you.
Yeah.
And almost all the time it is, because we're pretty good at this point at curating. But if it's not, then great. No hard feelings, and maybe just this wasn't the right fit. It happens every once in a while. But so often, if they just do make that commitment, they'll be great at week 6.
Exactly. I mean, we don't, I think as market managers, place vendors into our markets that we know are not going to be a good fit, because that just damages the success of the market overall. If people are coming in, even with that 6-week time period, if they come in for 6 weeks and then it doesn't work and they leave, and then another vendor's in for 6 weeks and leave. I mean, that's not
That's
good
a
for
morale
anybody.
thing. Yeah.
So I think we don't do that. So, it's just explaining that to the vendors, because they kind of have to hang on, because like you said, it might take to that 6th week for their like real customers to come around. So I think they get all kinds of ideas in their head about why it won't work for them. And, I've had vendors say, oh, I'm a grocery item and this market is not for groceries. And it's like, well, we've had 80 vendors here for years that have not left. They're here every week and they can leave anytime they want, but they're not. And they sell groceries every week at this market. So it's not that it's not groceries.
Yeah, it's not that.
And it's possible that the item is not working.
Sure.
Like you said, some items just don't click at the market. It's not a good market fit or whatever. Or your margins are too weak to be at a market where you have to build that up and have waste. That's also a thing that happens with business, and it is what it is. But, it's just giving it like 2 or 3 weeks and then saying this isn't going to work. That's just so defeating for everybody. And it like upsets the customers.
Yeah.
So
they've just gotten excited and they're
Yeah.
about to buy, and then you go. It's frustrating for them. And customers that feel frustrated at a market have that impression of being frustrated at that market.
Yeah.
Even if they don't narrow it down to that one vendor. Sometimes they can't even identify why it is that they're frustrated.
Yeah.
But then they feel, okay, well, farmers markets are a frustrating place to shop. I'm going to Trader Joe's. So we don't want that to happen.
We don't want that to happen. Yeah. And vendors who are listening, a lot of times what happens, especially with markets that are at capacity, is if we offer a spot for you at the market, we're likely declining somebody else. So what I've done is decline someone else that would give it the 6 weeks, and you come in and you give it 3 weeks and then you leave. But in the meantime, in those 3 weeks, that other vendor has gone to find another market, and now they're committed and they can't do this market anymore. So everyone's losing in this situation, because they really are. We were their first choice, but then they went and they've committed to a different market, and they are not going to break their commitment. But now you're out, and now I have an open space, and now I have to start a vendor application process all over again with somebody new. So it's just like, it's very frustrating. And that's why our policies are so clear about that, about the commitment period. So it's helpful for vendors and farmers market managers to understand those policies and to take them seriously.
Yeah, and know why.
They're all with
know why
purpose.
we have them.
Exactly.
So everybody wins.
Yeah.
So kind of related to that,
Yeah.
this question comes up a lot, all over, in our classes, in our online community, at the conference. what do you do with multiple applications in a category you feel might be full?
Mhm.
So who decides? Who decides if you're full? Are your other vendors selling out? Do you have a board that helps you
Yeah.
decide on what vendor applications to take who is in one of those categories and is sure it's full?
That is something we see. We see a lot of those comments in our community group. Like, my board is telling me I can't accept this vendor because they own a farm and they sell the same thing, or they're friends with the one cookie vendor that I have, and so they don't want other ones. And that's unfortunate situation. I mean, I don't work with a board. Ultimately, it's my decision, but
Right.
I do, take a lot of things into consideration. But that's tough when that happens, when you have a group of folks doing vendor application assessment with you that don't really understand the dynamics of the market. So that is tough, but maybe having, typing up kind of a protocol or a percentage ratio.
Yeah, having that percentage matrix going in is
Mhm.
so helpful. So we just added I still run kind of a newer market. We've got an on-site manager, but I still manage applications and curating and things. And we just had one of our dessert vendors say, oh, we have 5 dessert vendors here now. Now, granted, she was talking to me over an empty table because she's still selling out every week. I said, the market has grown and our guideline is we will take up to 12% baked goods and desserts because people love baked goods at farmers markets and it's a great local category. We do try to make sure that there's some differentiation so we wouldn't have all of those baked good vendors be selling chocolate chip cookies and nothing else. But,
Mhm.
some of them sell bars and some sell brownies and some sell cookies and some sell vegan cookies. So, but we know going in that 12% is about the capacity that we can take in that particular category. And so at that point, I decline other baked good vendors until the market continues to grow and we have another 5 or 6 farms and groceries. And then still keeping within my percentage, I can take another dessert vendor. So that's how we see it work. And if you lay out those percentages, and they'll be different for you. If you are surrounded by bakeries at your market, 12% may be too many bakeries. If you don't have any bakeries in town and your grocery store doesn't stock good breads, you may want 15% baked goods. But figure out in keeping with your mission for what you're providing to your community, what percentage of farms, meats, dairy, baked goods, your various categories are. That will help you figure this out when you get those applications. Now, there are some times when a category really is full.
Yep.
So what do you do about that? Let them down gently.
Oh my God, it's the worst part of my job. I say it all the time. I have to say no to a lot of people. And I know this is not a problem that a lot of market managers have. And I have run brand new markets and weekday markets that weren't as busy or full. And so I just said no to some folks, but I still had to say no because even though I had actual physical space at the market, that category really was full for the foot traffic that was at that market. So yeah, I usually say if it's a product that I really like and I would like to have at the market, but I honestly cannot add another, sourdough bread vendor because I just have enough for the amount of shoppers that are coming to that market. I just tell that vendor, honestly, I love your product. It's wonderful. You have a great thing here. I just cannot add one more vendor in this category to this market at this time. I'm going to save your application on file, and I have a spreadsheet. I make a note of the applications that I will go back to fill in if someone leaves or the market grows and I have room. And then I just honestly tell them, I don't know when a space is going to become available. I understand if you want to go explore other markets. I'll reach out when I have space.
Yeah,
I'm so
sometimes
sorry.
we point them towards other markets.
Yeah.
If we really are full and we don't think anything's going to open in that category pretty soon, we'll say, hey, you know what? There's actually a new market that just opened in this community, and I'll bet they still have openings for bakers, and I think you'd do well there. So
Yeah.
we do that too. Keeping in touch with your other market managers in your area is helpful for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I have a response that typically I send to market or to vendors that have applied for just categories that I'm full at. I mean, especially like prepared food at my Saturday market. I have probably 400, not even exaggerating, applications for prepared food that are just sitting in our email over the past like 3 or 4 years. And I've admitted like one new prepared food vendor there in those last 4 years. And so I just tell them like there's probably like 0% chance you're going to get in, or like 2% maybe if somebody, leaves and I happen to have a spot open. But I say, here's the list of all the markets in San Diego County. Here's some cool pop-ups that I know of. There's some breweries around that I go to, I frequent in my free time, and they have cool, food vendors sitting outside. I'd reach out to them. That's a great place to just get your feet wet and get networking with folks, because like event coordinators go to these things, obviously. So if I saw you at a brewery, I might be like, ooh, your booth setup looks great. Your food is great. I'm going to think of you the next time I have a hole that opens up. So yeah, just trying to point them in the right direction. I usually send them the link to our vendor application Tent Talk podcast episode, because we really go deep into, why we do what we do with vendor applications. So I feel like if they're really interested, that's helpful. But yeah, it's really hard to say.
Yeah,
it's
it
hard
is
to
really
say
hard.
no. And it's hard to...
The short answer is that make sure you really are full.
Yes.
Because markets with just a single vendor in a category are not as successful as markets that give shoppers choices. So open your mind to the idea that your current cookie vendor might actually sell more cookies if you add some more cookies, because people will think, oh, that's a market that's a good place to buy cookies. And so more people will come there. We very often find that, a meat vendor that is afraid if another meat vendor comes in, it's going to encroach on their business. Oftentimes we'll see people add a poultry vendor and another meat vendor, and everybody does so much better. Yeah. So be careful about thinking that you're full when maybe you're not. Yeah. But then lots of other good tips here for how to manage that beyond that.
Folks want choice.
They do.
They really do. They buy more when there's choices.
Absolutely.
Too many choices, not so great. Got to find that balance. A balance of choice is important, and it's better for sales for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep that in mind.
More critical mass of things on offer will bring more humans to the market that will buy things.
Exactly. Yep. All right. So we have, one more question to kind of round out this episode, but we did have a question from a listener that was asking our expert opinion about how we handle this kind of thing. How do we handle shoppers who complain about our offerings? So this is kind of ties into the other questions that we've had as well. Shoppers that are saying, oh, you don't have enough vegan vendors, or you have this vendor but not this vendor, or where can I get, bread or hummus or something like that. So I think the way that we work with our markets is, we do listen to our shoppers. We don't brush those people off, even if it's like they don't understand and we can't get a fish vendor. There's only one fish vendor in town, so it's really hard to get. And they're committed.
And we
on
don't
this
have
weekday.
bananas.
And we don't have bananas.
And you can't get peaches in February.
Exactly. Yes. Oh, yes. I just had this on Saturday. So a shopper was very upset that our avocado guy wasn't there. Well, his season ended. And she just kept asking, well, where is he? Like, why isn't he here? I'm like, well, there's an avocado commission, and it's illegal for him to be here selling avocados because that season has ended.
For that particular variety of avocados. It's so funny. I mean, some of these rules are crazy. I'm not surprised that shoppers don't know it.
Oh,
but
yeah. They're also nuts. But she was just like, please. I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. We do have avocados, but they're not this guy's. So, but we handled that by going, I'm so sorry. We do, we feel the same way too. His avocados were great. We can't wait for January when he comes back. He's so wonderful. We're definitely going to have him back when he comes back. We always save a spot for him at the market. So just kind of listening to her. And then I think she kind of came around and was like, okay, fine. I'll go find something else to buy at the market. It's like, yeah, I'm sure you can find something else that you like. But just listening and also saying, oh, okay, so the shoppers really like his avocados. They like his prices. They like just that he just sells this kind of avocado in a little bag of 4. Like, they just love it. And like his family is there. So it's like listening to that feedback from the shoppers just reinforces, like, yes, that we need to have a space for him. And then really, I mean, you can't build a market with just only things that you like or that you think people will like, because if those shoppers are not enjoying those offerings and then the shoppers aren't coming, then those vendors that you like aren't selling anything, and then your market is going to cease to exist. So I think this happened with our Wednesday market. We tried to make it like a chef market. Like, all the chefs are going to come out. So we're going to have big farmers that can sell lots of stuff to the chefs. And then some chefs did come and do come regularly in the neighborhood. But the folks that work in the neighborhood were saying, hey, we want a place to grab lunch real quick. Like, do you have prepared food vendors, or like hummus and chips I can take back to the office? And it was like, well, no, I guess we should add those things. So listening to the shoppers and kind of building the market around the clientele that you have, I think is also really important to keep in mind.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you should have a mission. You should know what you're trying to accomplish with your market. And certainly you want to listen to your vendors and your farmers, but you really want to listen to your shoppers. Mm-hmm. Your shoppers are what's going to make you successful. Now, granted, you got a bunch of shoppers that want to come say you should fill these booths with Twinkies. We're probably not going there. But but beyond the ridiculous,
yes.
The shoppers are the ones that should be advising you. The shoppers are who you need to please.
Yep.
And if you please the shoppers, it will benefit your farmers and vendors.
Yep.
So that's what we need to remember, is that the shoppers are leading us. Sometimes people that complain they just want to be heard.
Yep.
We have some shoppers that sometimes elderly, sometimes not, who really their main point of community contact is their farmers market each week. They don't have a lot of other folks in their lives that they can vent to. And sometimes they vent to us about things that really aren't about the market. And, smothering those folks in kindness, even if they're kind of complaining, can build the most loyal shopper in the world. Some folks just really want to be heard. They want to know that somebody cares about them being unhappy right at that moment, and maybe encourage them to find something that will make them happy in a different moment. And you can do good things for people around you by just listening. So that's important. Arguing, it's really tough to win an argument with a shopper. I wouldn't advise doing that. Just a lot of times just listening. Yes, I understand why you're frustrated. I'm sorry you feel that way. Have you checked out the new peach vendor?
Yes. Can you believe the weather today? It's beautiful. Yeah.
How lovely it is.
I think kind of over-explaining your, strategy and the way that the matrix of your market, curating, that's too much information.
Yeah.
So just kind of commiserating a little with them
Sure.
and saying, oh yeah, we sure do miss them too. I know when a vendor calls out and is not at the market and it's somebody that has a really specific product, especially like a dietary restriction, like if our vegan or gluten-free vendors are out, those folks are upset because that's how they eat. They can't just go buy something from someone else. They have a dietary restriction. So just really saying, you know what, I'm so sorry. You can't you don't go into over explanation about how you have a policy in place and they didn't do it. So just kind of being their friend. That's kind of, they want to speak to the manager, and guess what? You're the manager.
You're it.
So kind of, and dealing with that with kindness, I really will. We have a lot of shoppers that have, come up and, been upset with me a couple times and over the many years, and they are they're there every week and they fill their whole cart and basket and they say, good morning, Bridget. And they are so friendly now. So it's just kind of, people have their days.
Yeah, there's an old adage in business that a resolved complaint can create the most loyal customer, better than somebody that's never had a complaint. It's how you deal with those things that can really endear people to what you do and who you are. Absolutely.
I say this to my staff about vendors all the time. I say, you know what? Vendors have bad days. And if you can get through a conflict with a vendor, that vendor will sometimes be the strongest, most loyal, longtime vendor that you'll have. There's many vendors at my market right now that we've been in conflict before, and they are just the most wonderful, compliant vendors. They show up on time, they're pleasant, and it's, so working through an issue with somebody can definitely make you stronger. So think of that when you're working with your shoppers and everybody else at the market.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, we love hearing about the challenges and the triumphs that you're having at your farmers markets. Each market is different, and we are all surprisingly alike, too, in what fills our days. If you have a question, email us at connect@farmersmarketpros or message us on Instagram @farmersmarketpros. You'll reach Kat or myself or Aaron or Casey or someone that can get you an answer, or we'll pop it on the pod next time we have a question and answer session like this. If you need a quick answer from the hive mind, answer the qualifying questions and join the Farmers Market Pros community on Facebook if you're not there already. There are just so many things happening and so much knowledge and experience in the conversations that happen there every day.
Thanks for listening today, and big thanks to Farmers Market University for helping market managers hone and verify their professional skills, and for supporting Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. Learn more about their current training and certification programs by clicking the Farmers Market University logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Thanks for listening to Tent Talk today. Please leave us a review on your podcast app or wherever you listen to Tent Talk. Let us and others know how you're enjoying the podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Tent Talk. Connect with fellow farmers market folks in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community, and follow us on Instagram @FarmersMarketPros. Find online education and other resources at farmersmarketpros.com. Tent Talk is brought to you by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Tent Talk is hosted by Kat Fields-White and Bridget Myers and produced by Leandra Hayes, with original music by David Mead. Tune in next week for another great episode.